Building a business with my wife meant we were partners in everything. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids, and a successful HR consulting firm. It all seemed so solid until that morning in the coffee shop when she looked right through me and at him. What I discovered next would shatter everything I believed about my life. My name is Samuel Thompson. I'm 45, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. My wife, Nina, and I had built our HR consulting firm from the ground up. We started in our garage 12 years ago, helping small businesses navigate the labyrinth of employee relations. And we were good at it. Good enough for a house in Westfield. Good enough to put our kids, Daniel and Aria, through decent schools. Good enough that I truly believed we were partners in everything. I'm not the kind of guy who falls apart easily. 23 years in the Army Reserve taught me to keep a cool head when things go sideways. It taught me to read people, to spot trouble before it spots you. But apparently, all that training never prepared me for the enemy sleeping in my own bed. It all started to unravel on a Tuesday morning at Brew & Co., our downtown coffee spot. Nina had suggested we grab coffee with the team before our quarterly review meeting. A team huddle, she'd called it. I should have known something was off when she spent 40 minutes getting ready, changing her outfit twice, and putting on makeup like she was heading to a photo shoot. I got there first and claimed our usual corner table, big enough for 6. The morning crowd was typical. Business types checking emails, students hunched over laptops, and the retired guy who came every day to read 3 newspapers cover to cover. I ordered my black coffee and Nina's vanilla latte, the same drinks we'd been having for 5 years. Nina walked in 15 minutes later with Kelvin Shaw, our newest hire. We'd brought him on 6 months ago to handle our expanding client base. The guy had impressive credentials, an MBA from Northwestern, 10 years at a Fortune 500 company. On paper, he was exactly what we needed. In person, he was the smooth-talking, charming type who made everything look easy. "Samuel," Nina called out, waving as if we hadn't shared a breakfast table just hours before. She was wearing her Bordeaux blazer, the one she said made her feel powerful. Kelvin followed in her wake, flashing a practiced smile that probably worked wonders in boardrooms. They slid into the seats across from me, and I immediately felt like a third wheel at my own company's meeting. Nina launched into an animated conversation about a client pitch, directing most of her comments to Kelvin. When I tried to contribute, she would nod politely before turning right back to him, as if I hadn't said anything of consequence. Kelvin suggested we restructure our approach for the Henderson account, Nina said, leaning forward slightly. He thinks we're being too conservative. I'd been managing the Henderson account for 3 years. I knew every nuance of their corporate culture. Their CEO specifically requested a gradual implementation, I mentioned, but Kelvin's experience with larger firms gives him insights we might be missing, Nina interrupted, her hand briefly touching Kelvin's forearm. Right, Kelvin? The touch lingered for about 3 seconds too long. The conversation continued to flow around me, as if I were invisible. 3 more team members arrived. Janet from accounting, Mike from client relations, and Sarah, our newest junior consultant. Each time someone joined, Nina introduced them to Kelvin, as if he were the guest of honor, and I was just another employee. Kelvin has some brilliant ideas about expanding our corporate training modules, Nina announced to the group, her eyes practically shining. I watched as she hung on his every word. laughing at jokes that weren't particularly funny, and enthusiastically agreeing with suggestions I'd made months ago, which she had dismissed as premature. The worst part wasn't just that she was ignoring me, it was like she was actively erasing me from the narrative of my own company. "What do you think, Samuel?" Janet asked, clearly noticing the strange dynamic at play. Before I could answer, Nina jumped in. "Oh, Samuel's always been more focused on the operational side. Kelvin understands the big picture." The big picture. 20 years of building this business from scratch. And suddenly, I was just operational. Kelvin leaned back in his chair, that confident smirk never wavering. "Samuel's definitely got the day-to-day locked down," he said, as if he were doing me a favor. "But sometimes you need fresh eyes to see new opportunities." Fresh eyes. Right. I excused myself to get another coffee, needing a moment to process what I was witnessing. Standing at the counter, I could hear their conversation carry on without missing a beat. Nina's laugh echoed through the cafe, the same laugh I used to love hearing when we worked late together, solving problems and planning our future. When I returned to the table, they were discussing vacation destinations. Somehow, the conversation had shifted from business to Kelvin's recent trip to Colorado. "The skiing was incredible," Kelvin was saying. "You should definitely check it out sometime, Samuel." "Oh, Samuel doesn't ski," Nina answered for me, a little too quickly. "He's more of a homebody." It hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suggested a ski trip to Colorado just last winter. She'd said we couldn't afford it, not with the kids' college funds to consider. But apparently, when Kelvin suggested it, it became a brilliant idea worth discussing in detail. I sat there for another 15 minutes, an outsider at my own meeting. When Nina started talking about our family dog, mentioning how Kelvin would just love Charlie, using his name as if they were old friends, I had had enough. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. The movement was deliberate. "Samuel," Nina called out, her voice suddenly uncertain. "Where are you going?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that morning. "You seem to have everything under control here," and I walked out, leaving my untouched coffee to grow cold on the table. Walking to my truck, I felt something I hadn't felt since my reserve unit was ambushed in Afghanistan. The cold clarity that comes when you realize you're in enemy territory. My phone buzzed twice with texts from Nina, but I didn't look. Whatever excuses she was concocting could wait. Instead of going back to the office, I drove to the programming lab at the community college where I'd taught night classes 5 years ago. My friend Ricky still ran the computer center there. More importantly, he owed me a favor from when I helped his son get into the program. He let me use a private terminal, no questions asked. I logged into our shared cloud server. We used the same password for everything, her mother's maiden name plus the year of our anniversary. She never bothered to change them, always saying we had nothing to hide from each other. Apparently, that philosophy only applied to one of us. The first thing I found was a folder labeled K Projects that I'd never seen before. Inside were dozens of files, presentation drafts, client notes, and strategy documents that Nina had been sharing exclusively with Kelvin. But it wasn't just business. There were personal photos mixed in. Kelvin at company events I didn't remember him attending. Kelvin at what looked like a wine bar I'd never been to. My hand remained steady as I dug deeper. The Army taught me to compartmentalize during reconnaissance missions. This was just recon. I found email threads discussing strategic planning sessions that took place on weekends when I thought Nina was visiting her sister. I found calendar entries for client dinners that coincided perfectly with nights she told me she was working late. Most damning of all, I found the receipts: hotel rooms, expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to places we supposedly could never afford. But the real gut punch came when I found the real estate listings. Nina had been researching properties in Colorado, not vacation rentals, but permanent residences, cozy mountain cabins with price tags that matched exactly what her share of our business would be worth if we divorced. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning her exit strategy. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, covered my digital tracks, and drove home. When I walked through the front door, Nina was in the kitchen, making dinner, as if nothing had happened. "There you are," she said, not looking up from the stove. "I was worried when you left so suddenly." I watched her move around the kitchen, this woman I had loved for 20 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "Just needed some air," I replied calmly. She had no idea her carefully constructed deception was already unraveling. The confrontation happened 2 days later, though not the way I'd planned. I had intended to wait, to gather more evidence, maybe consult a lawyer first. But life rarely follows tactical plans. Sometimes the enemy forces your hand. I was in my home office on Thursday night, reviewing the files I'd copied, when my 13-year-old daughter, Aria, knocked on the door. "Dad, can I talk to you about something?" she asked, her voice unusually quiet. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She sat in the chair opposite my desk, fidgeting with her phone case. "It's about Mom. She's been acting weird lately." My stomach twisted into a knot. "Weird how?" "She keeps getting calls and leaving the room to take them," Aria explained. "And yesterday, when she picked me up from soccer practice, there was a man in our car." Every paternal alarm bell in my head started screaming. "What man?" "She said he was from work. Mr. Shaw, I think. He was in the front passenger seat when she pulled up. When I got in the back, they were laughing about something, but they stopped when they saw me. Kelvin was in my car with my daughter, while my wife drove them around town. The violation felt so personal, it took my breath away." "Did they say anything to you?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Not really, but Dad, the way they were looking at each other." Aria's voice trailed off. It reminded me of how Jessica's parents were, right before their divorce. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good, sometimes. "Thanks for telling me," I said, pulling her into a hug. "You did the right thing." After Aria went to bed, I found Nina in our bedroom, scrolling on her phone with that same secret smile I'd been seeing for weeks. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. "About what?" she asked, not looking up. "About Kelvin Shaw being in our car with our daughter." Her phone slipped slightly in her hands. There it was. The first genuine reaction I'd gotten from her in months. "Aria told you about that." Nina's voice was carefully neutral. "She's worried about you, about us. She's 13, and she's noticing things you apparently think I'm too stupid to see." Nina put her phone down and faced me, really faced me, for the first time in weeks. "Samuel, you're being paranoid. Kelvin needed a ride to pick up his car from the shop. It was completely innocent. Like the weekend trips to visit your sister that match up perfectly with his vacation days." The color drained from her face. "How did you—" "I know about the hotel receipts, Nina. I know about the real estate searches in Colorado. I know about the separate bank account you opened last month. She stood up slowly, and I could see her shifting into the same calculated mode she used with difficult clients. It's not what it looks like, she began. It never is, I interrupted. But here's what it does look like. It looks like our daughter's mother is lying to her father and bringing strange men into the family car. It looks like our son's parents' marriage is falling apart and no one is being honest about it. Nina's composure finally cracked. You had no right to spy on me. I had every right to protect my family, I shot back, something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The weekend brought a family dinner that felt like a performance neither Nina nor I wanted to give. Daniel and Aria sensed the tension, but didn't know its source. We all went through the motions, passing dishes, discussing homework, planning Daniel's upcoming college visits, while the elephant in the room grew larger with every forced smile. On Sunday morning, while Nina was at her yoga class, I decided to act. I called Dr. Harold Williams, a therapist I'd heard about in veteran circles. The man had a reputation for being unconventional, but guys I respected swore he could help sort through the toughest situations. Dr. Williams, a gruff but warm voice answered, "What can I do for you?" "I need someone to talk to about my marriage," I said simply. "But I'm not looking for couples therapy. I need clarity on what I'm dealing with." "Come in this afternoon," he said. "Bring whatever proof you have, and bring your anger. We'll sort through it." Dr. Williams' office was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of diplomas and leather furniture, the walls were covered with tools, hammers, axes, even a sledgehammer. In the center of the room, there was a pile of old dinner plates and a wooden crate. "Combat veteran?" he asked as I walked in. "Army Reserve, 23 years. Good. Then you understand that sometimes destruction must precede reconstruction." He handed me a pair of safety goggles and pointed to the sledgehammer. "Tell me about your wife while you break some things." It sounds insane, but it worked. For the next hour, I shattered plates and glasses while I laid bare every detail of Nye's betrayal. With every swing, my rage found an outlet instead of corroding me from the inside. "She's not just cheating on you," Dr. Williams observed as I pulverized a ceramic bowl. "She's rewriting your history, making you the villain in your own story." "Exactly," I said, bringing the hammer down on another plate. "She has our daughter questioning if I'm stable. She's probably telling Kelvin I'm some kind of control freak." "Classic projection," Dr. Williams nodded. "She's doing the very thing she's accusing you of. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" When I left his office, I had a plan. Not revenge. Something better. I was going to give Nye exactly what she thought she wanted, but on my terms. On Monday morning, I walked into our office with a briefcase full of documents. Nye was already at her desk, looking refreshed from whatever story she'd told herself about our marriage over the weekend. "Nye, we need to discuss a corporate restructuring," I announced, placing the folder in front of her. She looked up, surprised. "What kind of restructuring?" "I'm proposing we dissolve our partnership. You take the corporate training division. I'll take the HR consulting. A clean, fair division of assets." Her face went pale. "Samuel, that's a major decision. Shouldn't we discuss this further?" "I've already run the analysis," I said calmly. "We've grown in different directions professionally. It makes sense to formalize the separation." What I didn't tell her was that the corporate training division, while lucrative on paper, was entirely dependent on the contracts I had personally negotiated. Without my relationships, she would struggle to keep those accounts. Meanwhile, the HR consulting side had steady, reliable clients who valued long-term relationships over flashy presentations. I don't understand. Where is this coming from? Nye said, but her voice lacked conviction. Clarity, I answered. Something I've been missing lately. The proposed business split sent a shock wave through our small company. Janet from accounting requested a private meeting to voice her concerns. Mike from client relations made it clear he would be staying on my side of the operation. Even Sarah, our newest hire, seemed to understand which way the wind was blowing. But the real test came when Kelvin tried to insert himself into the negotiation process. Samuel, perhaps I could help mediate this, he offered during what was meant to be a private discussion between Nye and me. Sometimes an outside perspective can be valuable. I leveled him with the same look I used on subordinates who overstepped their bounds in the army. Kelvin, this is a conversation between business partners. You are an employee. His confident smirk faltered. I just thought, given my experience with corporate restructuring, your experience is noted, I cut in, but it is not relevant here. Nye jumped in quickly. Kelvin has some valuable insights on efficiency optimization. I'm sure he does, I replied coolly, but those insights are not relevant to the dissolution of the partnership. The room fell silent. It was the first time I had used the word dissolution out loud, and it hit Nye like a physical blow. She had been operating under the assumption that she could have her affair and keep her comfortable life. The possibility that I would actually end our business partnership, or by extension, our marriage, hadn't occurred to her. Samuel, you're being rash, she said, her voice trembling slightly. We built this company together. It's our legacy. Legacies require trust, I said simply. I'm not sure we have that anymore. Over the next few days, I watched Nye scramble to understand the financial implications of what I'd proposed. She spent hours on the phone with lawyers and accountants, trying to determine if the deal I offered was fair, or if I was somehow taking advantage of her. What she discovered was that I had been scrupulously honest in my proposal. Every asset, every contract, every piece of intellectual property was accounted for and divided equitably. She couldn't challenge the split without admitting she was already planning to leave anyway. Meanwhile, I began having one-on-one conversations with our clients, not to poison them against Nye, but to ensure they understood the changes that might be coming, and to reassure them of the continuity of service. The Henderson account, the one where Nye had dismissed my expertise, requested a meeting specifically with me. When I explained the potential restructuring, their response was immediate and clear. Samuel, we've worked with you for 3 years, the CEO said. Our contract goes where you go. That Kelvin fellow may have flashy ideas, but you understand our culture. One by one, the clients chose. One by one, they chose me. By Thursday, it was clear that Nye's half of the business, while profitable in theory, would be a shell in practice. At home, she escalated her campaign to paint me as unstable. She'd expressed concern to other parents at soccer practice when I arrived late. She mentioned to our neighbors that I was going through a difficult time and working odd hours. The most insidious part was how she framed my discovery of her affair. When I confronted her about another unexplained charge on her credit card, she sighed dramatically and said, Samuel, this paranoia isn't healthy. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere. Finding hotel receipts isn't paranoia, I replied calmly. It's accounting. See, this is what I mean. she said to our son Daniel, who had walked into the kitchen during our conversation. Your father thinks I'm hiding something sinister when I'm just trying to maintain our professional relationships. Daniel looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Smart kid. He was staying out of the adult drama. He didn't understand yet. But Nye's biggest mistake was underestimating our children's intelligence. Thursday evening, our daughter, Aria, came into my study. Dad, Mom told me you might be having some kind of breakdown, she said directly. But you seem fine to me. In fact, you seem more focused than usual. What do you think? I asked her. I think Mom is acting stranger than you are, Aria said bluntly. She keeps talking about you like you're not around, and, well, she was crying on the phone but pretended she wasn't when I walked in. My daughter was becoming collateral damage in Nye's attempt to rewrite reality. That crossed a line I would not tolerate. Friday morning, I called Dr. Williams again. She's trying to gaslight me, I told him. Classic manipulation tactic, but it's affecting my kids. Time to flip the script, Dr. Williams said. You've been on defense. It's time to go on offense. What do you have in mind? A family meeting, I said, but not the kind she's expecting. On Saturday afternoon, I gathered Daniel, Aria, and Nye in our living room. I had spent the morning preparing, printing documents, and rehearsing what needed to be said. This wasn't about revenge, it was about honesty. I've called this family meeting because there are some things you all need to know. I began, looking at each of them in turn. Your mother and I are getting a divorce. Nye's face went white. Samuel, this is not how we should. This is exactly how we should handle this, I interrupted firmly. With honesty. Daniel, Aria, your mother is having an affair with a man named Kelvin Shaw. She has also been hiding money and making plans to leave our family. Dad, Aria gasped, but she didn't look surprised. Shocked? Yes, but not surprised. Daniel just nodded slowly, as if the pieces of a puzzle were finally clicking into place. The reason I've seemed stressed lately, I continued, making air quotes, is because I've been trying to figure out why our family finances don't add up, and why your mother has been lying about her whereabouts. Nye stood up abruptly. You can't just ambush the children with this. I'm not ambushing them, I said calmly. I'm stopping you from manipulating them. For the past 2 weeks, you've been telling them I'm having some kind of mental health crisis, instead of telling them that you're being unfaithful. Children shouldn't be involved in adult problems, Nye protested. You involved them the moment you brought your boyfriend around them, I countered. Aria, tell your mother what you told me about the man in our car. Aria looked between us, then spoke directly to Nye. Mom, I knew Mr. Shaw wasn't just getting a ride to the mechanic. I saw the way you two were looking at each other. The silence stretched for several long seconds. Here is what's going to happen, I continued. I am filing for divorce. I am requesting primary physical custody of both children. Your mother will have visitation rights, but she will be moving out of this house within 30 days. You can't decide custody unilaterally, Nye said, her voice shaking. I'm not deciding anything unilaterally, I replied, pulling out a folder. Daniel, Aria, you are both old enough to express your custodial preferences. The court will take your wishes into consideration. Daniel spoke for the first time. Dad, can we stay in this house? Keep going to the same school? That's the plan, son. Aria looked at Nye with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment mixed with something that looked almost like pity. Mom, why didn't you just tell us you were unhappy instead of lying about everything? Nye's composure finally shattered completely. Because I didn't want to hurt anyone. I never wanted it to go this far. But it did go this far, I said quietly, and now we deal with the consequences, like adults. The room was silent except for Nye's soft crying. Daniel, Aria, why don't you go to your rooms for a while? Your mother and I need to discuss some details. After the children had gone, Nye looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When did you become so ruthless? She asked. I didn't become ruthless, I answered. I just stopped being your safety net. 3 weeks after our family meeting, Nye made her last desperate play at the annual HR Professionals Conference. She had convinced herself that if she could present a united front in public, she could salvage her reputation and maybe even our marriage. She was wrong on both counts. The conference was held at the Grand Hyatt downtown, with over 200 industry professionals in attendance. Nye had us slated to co-present a workshop on sustainable partnership models in small business. The irony was apparently lost on her. I arrived to find her in the lobby, wearing her power suit and that practiced smile she used for networking events. Kelvin was nowhere to be seen, but I'd already done my homework. He was registered for the conference and staying in the same hotel. Samuel, Nye said brightly as I approached, I'm so glad we can put our personal issues aside for this professional obligation. Personal issues, I repeated calmly. Is that what we're calling adultery and embezzlement now? Her smile faltered, but she pressed on. We have a presentation to give. Can we focus on that, please? The workshop went exactly as I had planned. For 45 minutes, I laid out our company's partnership model with clinical precision, highlighting the importance of trust, transparency, and shared values in successful business relationships. Every point I made about professional integrity was a direct indictment of her behavior, delivered with the kind of calm, quiet authority that had the audience leaning forward. The bedrock of any partnership, I concluded, is the belief that both parties are working toward the same goals with equal commitment and honesty. The audience applauded. Nye looked like she wanted to disappear. During the Q&A, someone asked about handling partnership disputes when trust breaks down. That's an excellent question, I said, looking directly at Nye. When one partner discovers the other has been operating with hidden agendas, secret communications, and divided loyalties, the partnership is essentially over. The only question then is whether you can salvage anything worthwhile from the wreckage. That's when I noticed Harold Brennan, my father-in-law, standing at the back of the room. He had driven 2 hours to be there, and the look on his weathered face told me everything I needed to know about which side he was on. After the presentation, as people were filing out, Harold approached us. Nye, he said quietly, we need to talk. Dad, what are you doing here? She asked, visibly flustered. Supporting my son-in-law, Harold replied simply, the one who's been taking care of my grandchildren while you've been playing house with your boyfriend. The few remaining conference goers paused their conversations to listen. Nye's professional facade finally crumbled completely. You don't understand, she said desperately. I understand enough, Harold said firmly. I understand you threw away a good man and a solid family for some middle-aged fantasy. I know my children are confused and hurt that their mother chose to prioritize her affair over their stability. 3 months later, I found myself in Dr. Williams' office again. This time, however, it was for a follow-up session, not crisis management. The days of sledgehammers and shattered plates were gone, replaced by a quiet calm. We were here to discuss the future, not to sift through the rubble of the past. How are the kids adapting? Dr. Williams asked. Better than I could have hoped, I answered honestly. Daniel's at university now, studying business. He calls twice a week and comes home most weekends. Aria is thriving in high school, honor roll, still dedicated to soccer. And Nina? The divorce was finalized last month. She managed to split off her part of the business, but she's struggling without the client relationships I'd built over the years. Kelvin left her for someone else about 3 months ago. Apparently, he has a pattern of pursuing married women for short-term affairs. Dr. Williams nodded knowingly. Predators often do. Harold has been a godsend, I continued. He helps with Aria when I'm traveling for work. And he's made it clear to Nina that his relationship with our family depends on her future behavior. The consulting side of our business has grown by 30% since the separation. Turns out, clients valued consistency and integrity more than flashy presentations. I've hired 2 new consultants and moved us into a larger office space. Any regrets? Dr. Williams asked. I gave the question some serious thought before answering. I regret not seeing the signs sooner. I regret that my children had to witness their mother's destructive choices. But I don't regret standing up for myself and for my family. And what about dating? Ready to trust someone new? Maybe, I said. There's a woman named Jennifer. She works with a veterans service organization. She's divorced, has a teenage son, and she understands complicated family situations. We've had coffee a few times. Take it slow, Dr. Williams advised. You've been through a trauma. Healing takes time. Later that evening, I picked Aria up from soccer practice, and we stopped for ice cream on the way home. A Tuesday tradition we'd started since the divorce. She was telling me about her plans for summer camp when she suddenly fell quiet. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think Mom ever really loved us? Or were we just convenient? It was the question I had been both dreading and preparing for in equal measure. I chose my words carefully. Your mother loves you and Daniel very much. But sometimes adults make selfish choices that hurt the people they love. It doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It just means they prioritized their own desires over the needs of their family. Aria nodded thoughtfully. I still love her, but I don't want to live with her. That's okay, I assured her. Love and trust are 2 different things. You can love someone and still recognize that they aren't good for your daily life. Is that why you divorced her? Partly, I admitted, but mostly it was because I realized that staying in a dishonest marriage would teach you and Daniel that it's okay to accept lies and betrayal. I wanted to show you that you should fight for truth and dignity, even when it's hard. A smile spread across her face, the first genuinely happy one I'd seen from her in months. Thank you for fighting for us, Dad. Always, sweetheart. Always.